Okay, we're closing in. We're still finishing towards the end of the seventh parak, which focuses on Zimun. We're still on the subject of Zimun. Okay, we are on Nun Amen Aleph. A few lines into the wide lines. 4 lines into the wide lines. Echad Asara ve'echad Asaribu. You sent that, Akiva? Can't find your phone? Okay. Check. You got it? Okay, we said, Mr. Haver, you got it? The Mishnah brought a machlokas, whether there's a difference in the text of Zimun when you have 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. There's an opinion in the Mishnah that when you reach at that different level, it seems like the Mishnah understands that between 10 and 100 is one level. Even today, it's like a new number. You go to 100 and 109.99 is one level, 1,000, it's a different level. And as a result of that, the way you express the zimun, the zimun is when you come together, when you say a bracha to Hashem, you have to enlarge the text of the bracha. You add to the text of the bracha. There's the minimum text of the varech lelokeinu shachanu mishalo, but then we'll add nevarech Hashem elokeinu, and then we'll add maybe Hashem elokei Yisrael. There's different things that the Gemara says. There was one opinion that based on the amount of people, the text changes. Other opinion is no, the text does not change whether you have 10 people, you have 1,000 people, it's all the same. The Baruch Elokeinu Shachan Shlo. You don't add anything to that text. That was a discussion in the Mishnah. And now the Gemara is going to explain Moni Maris. The Gemara is going to explain that the Mishnah, because the Mishnah seems to have contradictory statements. Because one statement in the Mishnah says the differences between the size of the group, and then the other statement of the Mishnah says Echad Asara ve'echad Asaribui. The Mishnah says 10 people and 100,000 is the same. So it seems contradictory. One place you tell me that there's a difference based on the levels how many people you move up to. And the other part of the Mishnah says, no, there's no difference. It's all the same. So that's going to be the Gemara's question. It seems to be a contradiction. Now, that's the background to the introduction of the Gemara. So the Gemara says, the headline of the Gemara is Echad Asara ve'echad Asaribu, which means 10 and 100,000 are the same. So the Gemara says, Hagufa Kasha. The language of the Mishnah in itself is problematic. Amrit, you told me, Echad Asara ve'echad Asaribu. You told me that the law is the same between 10 and 100,000. Alma, we see Kiadadim Ninu that are the same. V'hadiktani, but then you learn the Meya Omer. When you have 100, you say a different text. Be'elef Omer, when you have 1,000, you say a different text. Be'ribui, when you have 10,000, you say a different text. Omer. So that's the Gemara's question. Mr. Haber, is the Gemara's question clear? Omer Rabbi Yosef says, look, Kasha. Yosef says, you know why? It's really two different opinions. It's two different rabbis talking. So therefore, you can have something you think is contradictory. That's if it's one person talking. So then you say the it's a contradiction. But if it's two different people talking, two different people have a right to have two different opinions on the subject. That's what the Gemara says. Ditnan, Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi says, Lefi, Lokash Harab Yossi Glili Harab Akiva. Nan, Rabbi Yossi Glili Omer. Lefi Rova Kahal Hey Mevorchim. According to the amount of the people that are in the kahal, that's how the bracha will be. There'll be the expression of the bracha depending on how many people are in the kahal. Shenema v'makelot baruchu elokim. It says v'makelot in a plural language that there is indicating there are different groups. We're not going to consider the group of 10 and the group of 100 and the group of 1,000 all the same. It's a different group. And once it's identified as a different group, it has a different way of expressing itself. Okay, now we all know there's a halacha, there's something called Rov Am Hadrat Melech. We all know there is a difference of 10 and 100 when it comes to, let's say, reading a Megillah. There's a special mitzvah when you go to read Megillah Esther, Rov Am. A lot of people coming together. It's greater than the 10 people. It's a different Kiddush Hashem. It's a different honor to Hashem when many people come together to do a mitzvah together than a fewer people. The more people, the more Kiddush Hashem. It's a different situation. So he says that pasuk from Makelot that identifies it as a different group, therefore that shows you that it's a different group, and therefore it's appropriate to have a different text, an additional text. So the Gemara continues. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Ma Matzinu Beit HaKnesset. But Rabbi Akiva was a dissenting opinion, and he says no. Rabbi Akiva says there's no difference between. Akiva, if you want to send again to the group, Akiva, if you want to send again. Rabbi Akiva says there's no difference between 10 and 100. And where does he prove his point from? Beit HaKnesset. He says in a synagogue, by Kriyat Torah. What do you do in the shul? A person gets an aliyah, correct? What does he say? Bohu es Hashem hamavorach, correct? Does he change the text whether there's 10 people in the shul or 100 people in the shul? He says the same Bohu es Hashem hamavorach when you have 10 and whether you have 100. So the same way when in a shul that it's the same thing. So thank you very much, Akiva. It's just sort of what you went through. Just like in the shul, it's the same. It's the same thing when reading of the Torah. It doesn't make a difference if you have 10 people, 100 people. It's the same text. The text of the Baruch Hu es Hashem. When a person gets an aliyah, what does he say? But it's very similar to Zimun. Zimun is nevarech. You say, let's give a bracha to Hashem. And what is Baruch Hu? Baruch Hu, they also, as you're saying, give a bracha to Hashem. The difference is Zimun is nevarech, let us give a bracha. Baruch Hu is more calling directly to the other people. It's more of a focus on Baruch Hu. That's more of the focus. Even though you say Hamavorach, which means he is blessed by all, but it's pretty much the same thing. And yet, we don't find a difference in the shul. You don't change the text of when you're inviting the kahal to say a bracha, you don't change the text whether you have 10 people or 100 people. You say the same, Baruch Hu es Hashem havarach. You don't say Baruch Hu es Hashem Elokei Yisrael because you have 100 people. You don't change the text. So the same way you don't say the text by the shul, you don't say the text by Zimun. That's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva, Hi Krod Rabbi Yossi Aglili my Ovidle. What does he do with the pasuk of Rabbi Yossi Aglili? Which that pasuk of Rabbi Yossi Aglili indicated, we look at it as different groups. It's identified as a different group, b'makelot. And if it's a different group, it would seem to indicate that there should be some additional change in the text. So the fact that you call it different groups means it's not all the same. If you refer to 100 people as its own group and 10 as a different group, that means they're not the same. It's not all the same. They're not all the same, so therefore that would be the source that we should change the text. So what does Rabbi Akiva do with that pasuk, which seems to call them, which identifies them as different groups, which seems to indicate they're not the same? So the Gemara says, you know what he's going to say? An amazing thing. He says, he uses that pasuk that identifies it as a different group, that the makelos is referring to the babies, the fetuses, when all the women that were pregnant in the Jewish community at the time of the Kriyat Yam Suf, when the sea was split and the Jewish people went through the sea and the Egyptians were drowned, even the uber, even the fetus said Shirah to Hashem, sang a song to Hashem. We know it says, we know Chazals, we know the idea that when Rivka was pregnant with Esav and Yaakov, when she wanted it, when she passed by a synagogue, Beit Midrash, Yaakov wanted to come out. When she wanted to pass by Beit Avodah, Esav wanted to come out. We know that we have the idea of a malach learns with the uba. When a lady is pregnant, there's an angel that's learning with the uba. We're not privy to, and it's not something that we see because we don't see it, it's hidden. But so too, this, whatever that means, that the uba, the same way the uba learned Torah, the uba had said Shirah. The uba, that fetus, which is in the mother's womb, said Shirah, said thanks to Hashem at the splitting of the sea. And I was thinking, I think there's a big lesson. Why did we need the uba to say thank you to Hashem? I mean, it's one thing that we the people had to say thank you to Hashem. I presume it's the idea that because by singing a song to Hashem at the Kriyat Yam Suf as an uba will have an effect on that fetus, on that priest, but will be born later on. If a baby, and while it's even though it's a fetus, but the fact that that fetus said Shirah, that fetus said song to Hashem, now when that person, that baby is born, it's a different baby. Mr. Habe, you hear what I'm saying? I keep hearing it's a different, because that's a baby that sang Shirah to Hashem. You know, like my rabbi in the Mir Yeshiva, I learned by Rabbi David Kriyat. He was one of the great rabbis in the Mir Yeshiva. And he wrote many songs called Sukkot Aviv. Sukkot Aviv on Chumash, it's in English also on Chumash, and on the Gemara. Moni Yosef Atzadik. And he asked the following question. He said, when a lady is pregnant, the malach learns Torah with that child. And then when the baby is born, the baby forgets the Torah. So the question is, so what's the purpose of learning with the baby? If the baby's going to forget it. You hear that, Yosef Atzadik? So Rabbi Kriyat said, but because the angel learned with the baby, it makes it easier for the baby when the baby is born to understand Torah. The fact that it was exposed to Torah from an angel, learned with the angel, now when it comes to the world, it's able to learn Torah much easier. So that's what I'm proving from there is that what goes on in the fetus has a very profound effect on the child when the child is born. So too, I want to suggest that's also the idea of the uba saying Shirah. The uba saying Shirah, that fetus that said praise to Hashem, that sung praise to Hashem, that has an effect when the baby is born. Was a baby that child that grows up was a child that has within him, subconsciously within him, this child sang already praise to Hashem. Okay. The Gemara continues.
Rabbi, right just before we continue, so all that is right for Jewish kids or also non-Jewish kids?
I mean, I would think the ones that sang song to, it says, Az Yashem Moshe Uvnei Yisrael Shira Azov. The ones who sang Shirah were the Jewish community that we find. We find that the nations of the world, Shomu Amim Yigazun, Chilachaz Yoshvei Ploshet. The nations of the world, they were scared. Their reaction to what happened at the Kriyat Yam Suf was they were scared of the Jewish community.
No, I'm referring more to the baby thing, because Jewish, not Jewish, we all have this the mark on the lip, on the top lip.
Yeah. How that works? I can't tell you, because they say that maybe when it touches when the baby is born, the malach touches it, it forgets. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but regarding the Shirah, it's all the Jewish kids.
No, the Shirah, yeah, but the malachim, with baby in the mouth.
Yes. So that's a good question. Okay, so the Gemara continues. The Gemara says, first word of the line is Omer. Even the fetus in the womb of the mother. Amru Shirah Alayam, Shenema b'Makelo, Bohu Elokim Hashem, Mimkar Yisrael. The pasuk says in the Makelo, in the different group of they bless when the Jewish people, Makelos, when they gathered together on the Yam Suf by the sea to give thanks to Hashem, even the babies, Baruch Hu Lakim Hashem mimkar. Mimkar is from the inside. Mimkar meaning in the stomach, in the womb of the woman, they sang Shira, Mimkar. So that's the source. That's why it says the plural, because it was a different group. It's a group of the babies. Now the idach and or the fetus. Rav Yosef Glili. Rav Yosef Glili says that it has to do. He makes a difference between how many people there are regarding the text of the Zimun, because he learned it out from Makelo, from that's considered different groups. So where does he know that the fetus sang song at the Yam Suf? So the Gemara says, because he learns the Mimkar Nafka. The fact that it says Mimkar from the inside, that teaches us that's referring to the fetus as well. So it seems like from the Gemara, it's universal. Nobody's arguing on the fact that the fetus said song at the Yam Suf, and therefore he says he has 2 points he learns. He has 1 point with Makelo. It's called different groups. That meaning the people at the Yam Suf, he would say, or well, based on how many people you are with Makelo, it's called, we could call things groups, but they're not all the same group. The more people you have, you make it considered a different group. And also he learned Mimkar Yisrael. He learned from the Mimkar that there was also a singing, a praise from the fetus as well. Amar Rava. So Rava says, Halacha to Rabbi Akiva. The halacha is like Rabbi Akiva. What's the halacha like Rabbi Akiva? That you do not change the text of the Zimun, whether you have 100, 1,000, or 10 people. It's the same text of the Zimun. You don't add to the language of the Zimun. Ravina of Rav Chama. Ravina Rav Chama bar Buzi iklu lebei Reish Kaluta. They came to the house of Reish Kaluta. Come Rav Chama v'kamahada bei Meir. Now you can imagine, Reish Kaluta was the leading rabbi of the exile. You can imagine his table, a lot of people guests at the table. And Rav Chama was trying to find 100 people to make a zimor. He was counting. You ever see sometimes you go to, we have a minyan, he was counting, he was looking for 100. Why was he looking for 100? He wanted to get 100 people together to say a zimun, because he felt it'll be different, the text will change. Because if you have 100, now it's a different level, and you have to say a different text for the zimun. So what happened? Amalei Ravina. Ravina said, you don't have to get so busy. You're getting so busy to putting together 100 people. You don't have to. You know why? Because the halacha found Rabbi Akiva that whether you have 10 or 100, it's the same text. So you know what you should do? The other people can make their own zimun, because when you have, what do we say? When you have 10 people, they can't split up into 2 groups. 10, because you have the Shem Hashem. So you have to say the Varach Elokeinu. You can't make 5 and 5. But when you have 20, you can make 2 groups of 10. When you have 50, you could break it up into groups, because each group will have the name Hashem. So you have to have 100 people saying the Zima together. Now you might say that maybe there is an idea of Rov Am Hagat Melech. Shouldn't there be a law that the more people coming together to do a mitzvah is better? So the Gemara understood that, yes, nevertheless, the Gemara did not think he was bringing, because he was trying to get 100 specifically. If the point was he wanted to gather a lot of people to do a mitzvah together, so it's not about 100. It's about as many people as you could get to do a mitzvah together. So he wasn't gathering people all together to do the mitzvah because he wants more people to do the mitzvah. He was specifically looking for 100. So that he told them, you don't need to look for 100. There's no difference between 100 and 10 regarding the Zimun text. So that's what he told them back. So he said, same halacha, 10 and 100 have the same text. Okay, we should always but we should always be able to be focused on Zimun. I was at a shul this Shabbat, and they had a Suda Shlishit. There was about 100 people in the crowd, and the Mizamein, the one who said Zimun, some people answered, other people didn't even hear the Zimun. So what would have been the appropriate response? I would say in such a thing, the appropriate response is, well, people didn't hear the Zimun, they have to make their own Zimun. They didn't hear a lot of times, foolishly shit, one person says for everybody. And if you honor someone to say the Zimun, he should say it very out loud that everybody can hear it. Because that's the same. 10 and 100 is the same text. You don't add language of the text. You don't say Yir Hashem Elokei Yisrael. But I had the situation of Shabbat that the person, also you should know, the synagogue needs to know when the person you're honoring to lead the Zimun has to be capable of carrying his voice, or else you shouldn't give him the honor. With all due respect, he's not fit for the job. It's like by the Ashkenaz shul. In Ashkenaz, we go ahead and we take the Torah and we turn the Torah to everybody to see, right? That's how we do it in Ashkenaz. We have a different type of Torah. You can't give a guy Hagbah who's going to pick it up and will sit down and not turn it around to show everybody. You can't do that. He's not doing the job. The job has to get done, has to make a 360 to everybody in the synagogue, all directions has to see it. Right, Mr. Haver? That's what I work on, Have a great day.